Welcome to the Kellfire Show. I am Dr. Kelly Barron, and today I am so excited to have Brooke Bralove on the show. I've been looking forward to this episode for quite some time, and I'm so glad she could make time in her schedule to come talk to us today. So welcome, Brooke. A little bit about Brooke. She is a licensed clinical social worker, a psychotherapist, a certified sex therapist, a master ART facilitator, and a certified Daring Way facilitator, but master of ART practitioner. I really screwed that up.
That's okay.
There's so much. You're so accredited that I started running out of breath. I didn't know if I was
Yeah,
going to finish.
you gotta schedule that breath in somewhere.
Yes, but Brooke helps women of all ages, and this is, I think, huge, let go of perfectionism and move towards greater authenticity, joy, pleasure, and connection. And Brooke has been at this for a long time. She's been in private practice for over 20 years in the DC area. So again, welcome, Brooke. And I just wanted to start off by asking you, what inspired you to specialize in helping women navigate their sexual wellness journeys?
Well, first of all, Kelly, thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to our talk today, and I'm glad you are too. Always fun to talk about sex, right?
Always fun to talk about
Oh,
sex.
always fun and hard, and that's what we're going to get into today. But basically, I've always been a very open person, and I was the girl who would talk about sex with her friends growing up. Some friend groups don't, but I was always very comfortable with my sexuality and talking about it. And after I got divorced about 12 years ago, I really kind of moved into my own sort of awakening. And it was at that time that I thought, well, this is great. I want to share more. I want to learn more. And so I did go and become an ASEX certified sex therapist and have been doing that ever since. And I really enjoy it. I think women in general have been kind of sold this bill of goods that it just isn't true. And there's been zero emphasis on female pleasure. I mean, literally zero.
Yeah.
And that goes all the way back to childhood messages and not knowing our anatomy. I mean, let alone a partner, male or female, knowing our anatomy and how to please us. We don't know. We're not taught that it's okay to know. I do something called Vino and Vulvas, where I go into people's houses when they have a group of women gathering, and I do, a presentation really about anything they want related to sex. But I often, bring a bunch of sex toys for people to see and try out. The first thing I did was I brought a 3D, diagram of a clitoris. And
Oh,
I
yeah. That's
just
awesome.
yeah, I just put it up to 10 women in their 30s, very educated. Not one of them knew it was the clitoris. Not one.
Wow. I mean, I'm not surprised. I'm
Right.
not surprised. I don't necessarily know if you showed that to me right now. I'd be like, oh yeah, I know what that is.
Uh-huh. Okay, great. I love that you're sharing that. Yeah. So, this is really important work. This is really important work. Also, I just believe that there is sort of a God-given, whatever that means, God to you, right to pleasure and sexuality. I feel that that is inside of every human, and I like working with specifically women and couples, but that there's just this right to pleasure. And what I find actually sad is that even if I take away the sexual part and I just ask women in my office who I'm working with, what's pleasurable to you? They often can't name one thing.
That's a hard question.
It is a hard question. And what a good question.
Right,
Because,
exactly.
it's the same question. It's a very similar question to what's fun in your life or what is fun to you, and often people can't answer that either.
No. And I think like you right off the bat you nailed it on the head. My mother didn't tell me any, you get And I think girls get less of the birds and the bees kind of talk. We don't get that kind of that whole sex ed component, let alone you're allowed to pleasure yourself and you should and these are your parts. You know you have part that is different than about you have a vagina, but nobody tells you the other parts, like what makes up the vagina and everything involved in that.
Well, and
You not
even
told.
that, even that, we actually have a vulva. We have a vulva. The vagina refers to the vaginal opening. So we don't
Right.
even name it correctly.
Right.
And, we say boys have penises, girls have vaginas. And, even that's not quite correct,
No.
right?
Right. So you're telling me I have a tube. Thanks.
Right.
Great. What do I do with it?
Right. That somehow that defines us where a penis goes. I mean, literally, where a penis goes.
It's
That's what
it's
you have.
true.
Right.
That's true. Um, so when you have, like, say at these presentations, these parties that you do, I mean, how do you start with women who are just, like, let's say I come in, I'm 54, and I'm like, I am so naive, I know very little and I haven't felt comfortable, even going there.
Mhm.
Where do you start? What do you say?
Um, well, first of all, I want to know what what your goals are. Do you want to have more pleasure with your partner? Do you want to find out what you like just inside yourself? Have you had an
Good
orgasm? Have
question.
you never had an orgasm? Is orgasm important to you? It is important to most people. So, first of all, I mean, I get kind of what are your goals, but in general, I do kind of a sexual history. And I go back to when is your first awareness of your genitals, you know?
Right.
And usually it's, when your parents were potty training you and they'd say something like, do you need to wee wee? Or
Yeah.
they just call it your privates or they don't call it anything. And that already starts this process of not naming things correctly, right? Take, your little pee-pee's hanging out, that's your penis. And yes, we did call it a vagina. So, that's your vagina, that's your vulva. So even the way we don't have proper names, right? We say down there. It's a body part. Why
Right.
can't we just say vulva? Vulva. I mean, part of me always just wants to help. Maybe I'm actually thinking of something I'll do in a next group, but just have women just say vulva a billion times and
Right. Say
penis.
the words. How many women say clitoris or clit or vulva? Even I'm like, wow, I just said that.
Right?
Right. Like that should be normal speak,
Yeah,
normal
right.
terms.
Here's your nose, there's your vulva, here are your ears, So again, I think it goes back to that. And then of course it's, you know, you know, uh people, children masturbate and that's a normal thing. They do something that feels good. Now they usually do it for self-soothing rather than totally like sexual pleasure.
Right.
But what does a parent do when their little boy starts masturbating? Is it that's disgusting, you're going to hell? Or is it, hi, sweetie, I'm sure that feels good. It's fine for you to do that, but let's do that in your room when you're alone. We don't do it in the living room. We don't do it when we have guests over, but it's totally normal. And if that feels good, that's okay.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
That's
No,
so normalizing. So,
exactly.
how quickly do we shame children around sexuality, around exploration? And then that just begins this whole thing, right? And then we don't talk about it. And then, I mean, sex ed is a joke.
It
A
is.
the clitoris is almost never mentioned, right? And the clitoris has one function, pleasure. That's it. So if you're not naming that and talking about it in school, you're not giving proper education about anatomy. Just anatomy. Just friggin' name the parts at least,
Right.
right? And so I do start with anatomy for 100%. And then often I will ask a woman, has she ever looked at her vulva? And usually it's like, well, when I learned to put in a tampon, I looked or something,
Exactly. Exactly. That's so true.
right? And there's a lot of shame asking women to do that. There's a lot of shame. And then, of course, your vulva changes over time,
Mhm.
perimenopause. Your inner labia start to literally disappear, right? And no one tells you that. No one tells you that. But if you're looking, your vulva will start looking a little bit different. So all these things lead to shame, and all these things lead to I have to deny my pleasure. And again, if we're talking about the sort of patriarchal system, it's for the man. When does sex end? After a man
Exactly.
has an orgasm.
Right.
Really? I think you're missing a piece here. You're missing the orgasm for your partner. And
Exactly.
so again, everything about it is just dominated by men. You know, now I do think that's shifting. I want to be clear. I actually do think this younger generation of men, they are starting to ask, "What do you like? What can I do?" But women often just don't know, and so they
You
just
don't
say,
say it.
I don't know." And if they're not masturbating, then they won't know. So almost every single one of my sessions, sex therapy sessions, any of my talks, presentations, I basically say, homework, masturbate, masturbate, and masturbate some more. And that makes people very uncomfortable. And I understand that. But we've got to break that stigma first.
Right. And because I'm sure there are women that get their homework or haven't really had a lot of experience with it and stop.
Hmm.
Start and then go, "Oh, what am I doing?"
Right.
Or is this ever, nothing's going to happen, especially like a woman who hasn't had an orgasm or many orgasms. Um, how do you help them break through that sort of shame or embarrassment
Yeah.
or
So we start.
hesitation?
Yeah, so we start slowly. I usually start masturbation homework with what I would just call like body mindfulness and exploration. And so
Oh, that's
simply
good.
using fingertips, palms of your hand, and kind of not going to your genitals at all.
Ah,
And so for a woman, it would be okay to touch your breasts if they wanted to. But I basically like to take things off the table in sex therapy. And I know that sounds strange, but by taking the genitals off the table for the first couple explorations, there's no pressure, right?
exactly.
Touching your shoulder with your fingertips is not usually very threatening unless there's trauma. I do want to put a huge,
Right.
I don't want to say a shout out to trauma, but I want to make space for it, right? So with trauma, you may have to go about it differently. It might not be safe. Anything related to sex might not be safe at all, and that's a little bit more challenging to deal with.
Right.
But if there isn't a ton, of trauma, then we just start off with how does that feel? And I might suggest somebody get a feather or a blanket and use different textures to touch. Do you like soft touch? Do you like hard touch? Some people can't stand soft touch, right? Because they need like a deeper stimulation. And so if their partner comes up to them and just sort of runs their fingertips, along their shoulder, they're like, ugh, get off of me. But maybe they would like a strong touch. And so again, exploring hard, soft, fast, slow, things like that. And then sort of as that becomes more comfortable, I push them a little bit further to, of course, exploring their genitals. And again, having nothing, again, orgasm off the table, completely off the table. There is no goal of orgasm. And then you actually are making space for pleasure. But I do teach, I teach about the clitoris, and then I recommend some, websites. Yes is a really good website that teaches women how to masturbate, basically,
Right.
different techniques. I really like that. And, there are a lot of apps now, erotica apps that are almost geared toward women because women are not as visual. They don't
Yeah.
love, porn that is designed for men, again, which has women faking orgasms all day long but not necessarily actually having them.
Do you think that's why, the fantasy romance books resonate so well with women because it's not a visual thing, but we can certainly get in that headspace when we're reading about it. And I mean, I personally, like, visually, no, it's not doesn't resonate so well with me, but I can sure as heck read a scenario in a book and I can get it right like that.
Absolutely. There are great books, there are great, what I really love is, I'm a big fan of scheduling sex. Nobody likes that. Everybody pushes back, but I kind of say get over it because you schedule everything else. If you want to get fit, you schedule the gym or a personal trainer. You schedule everything in your life. Why somehow is sex above and beyond that or shouldn't need that? You make time for things that matter. And by the way, that could be masturbation time, self-exploration time, you know?
I think that's wild. It does fly in the face of what we're told. Like, definitely do not make it scheduled, or like let it unfold naturally. But in the way that you're explaining it, though, if we're scheduling time, and honestly, I guess with no expectation other than to just explore each other's bodies or your own body, and let it unfold from there, though.
Yeah, exactly. You're basically saying here is the time where I'm going to, try to shift into a different part of myself. And then inside that time, you do get to be spontaneous. There's all this stuff of, I just want the sex to be spontaneous. It used to be so spontaneous. Yes, that is true. But we need to differentiate between desire. So there's two kinds of desire. There's spontaneous desire and then there's responsive desire. Spontaneous is happened more when we were younger. You rip each other's clothes off,
Okay.
get horny when the wind blows, you think about something, you just want to have sex. So that's great, that's wonderful. But the majority of couples who have satisfying sexual relationships have more responsive desire sex. That means that you need something to respond to. So that means listening to erotica, reading your romance novel. That means, seeing your partner looking really hot as they're about to leave for work. There's nothing wrong with responsive desire. And if we wait for spontaneous desire to happen, especially in long-term relationships, we'll be waiting forever. So this is where Hollywood screwed us over. There are not that many, 50, 60-year-olds, sweeping off the desk, everything and having sex right away with their partner of 30 years. It just
Right.
doesn't happen as much. But when you make that time, when you focus, and when you say, let's see what happens, let's start touching each other, let's start making out, and let's see where it goes. That's responsive desire, and it's normal, and it's most of what happens in long term relationships. And I think people need to mourn that loss of some of the spontaneous desire. But then we actually like to poke holes in that too. So when you were in college, and you knew you were going to see the guy you were having sex with, and how to have a little relationship with, you knew you were going to see him later. What did you do to prepare? You might shave your legs, you'd put on your cute undies.
Right.
That's all in preparation for sex too.
Right.
So
That goes more into the, responsive, because you're actively preparing for it.
exactly. So even that isn't totally spontaneous because you were preparing with an expectation that that was going to happen later.
I think in this demographic, like women mid to late 30s, we'll go late 30s all the way, 60s and above, that we lose sight of that because we spend so much time taking care of everyone else's needs and putting everyone else in our family, our partners, that, and then we go, oh, our relationship's grown stale, that, I don't feel sexual. And I think women, at least the women that I've talked to, they also feel not necessarily ashamed, but somewhat defeated by the thought of, all right, I'm 50. I should put a garter belt on. I should be like prepare to entice my partner or even yourself to make yourself feel sexy.
Mhm.
And I don't know if that's what you hear often, but I think that that's just a little step that we could take
Mhm.
to your point, not necessarily wait to be swept off our feet every day or once a week, to actually put some thought into it.
Yeah, I mean, I always say you are responsible for your own orgasm at the end of the day.
Oh,
And
I
so
love that. Say that again. That was
you
great.
are responsible for your own orgasm.
That is brilliant. And nobody thinks like that.
Right. So again, you know, ask for what you want. You have to figure it out first, but ask for what you want. Turn yourself on. So if you know that you have a scheduled, you have a sex date, let's call it, and you know that is happening in 30 minutes, go take a bath. Go put, lotion on your body. Get into your body. Because a lot of what I hear most women saying is, I've got the grocery list, I've got all this stuff. And then again, I'm going with heterosexual couples. And then he just wants to do it. Well, I can't do it. My head's not in the place. So this is something that I find very important. Build a transition activity. You're right. Your brain can't switch that quickly. That's unfair. But what you can do is start becoming mindful of letting that part go. So you could do some deep breathing. Again, you could take that bath. You could meditate for 5 minutes. You could go for a brisk walk where you listen to some sexy music or
Right.
erotica. And that transitional activity is what can allow you to move into that more sensual and sexual part of yourself. But it requires mindfulness and presence. And a lot of pleasure, you can't basically have pleasure unless you are present.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
And so you have to work on that, the mindfulness, noticing what's happening in your body, outside of your body, and focusing on that rather than just, do I look fat? Is this a good position for me? Is she or he happy? Are they getting what they want? Just
Hmm.
focus on what is actually happening between you. And that will guide you to really toward pleasure and orgasm.
Yeah, I think we look at it as being selfish, but it's not at all.
No, and most partners will say, I want her to, I get the most, the
Right.
thing that turns me on the most is when she's turned on. Believe what your partner is saying. He or
Exactly.
she is telling you the truth. So they're saying they want that. They want that for you because they love you if you're in a long-term committed relationship. So why not focus? And you have to teach your partner, but you can't teach your partner until you've figured it out yourself, which is why homework is always masturbation. And I love toys. Love,
Good.
love,
I'm glad we're going
love.
here.
Yeah, I love sex toys. I find them so exciting because there are many different kinds and, not one size, fits all
Right.
basically. So one person might love it. But I think women should be, the other day, my favorite vibrator to recommend was on sale. And so I just sent it to all my friends. I just said, hey, I recommend this, personally and professionally. And, I was like, why am I not sharing this, with it? Because, and again, it may not work for that person, but there's new technology, there's suction technology, there's vibrators, there's sort of all these different ways. And they, frankly, I think are more effective. And so I really do suggest people experiment with toys. If you don't want to go to a sex shop, which is fine, you can do it so discreetly online. Amazon sells vibrators.
Yeah,
Just tell your kids not to open the Amazon box.
exactly. Exactly. And hope that Amazon stops sending things without being in a box like they do now, where it just shows up right and
Oh
it's
yeah,
normal.
no, they're
Yeah.
not going to just have a vibrator
Yeah,
show
here
up.
comes the Doc Johnson. Here, look what mom got today.
Right. And again, there's so many other websites where you can read about them and understand the technology. A lot are waterproof, so you can take them, if the only alone time you get because you have kids running around and, partner and work, you know, buy one that's, waterproof and
Right.
do it in the shower.
What do you get a lot of, or do you get women, or what would you say to women that, they've been in either a long-term relationship or they're, in a new relationship or however it is, and they don't fully understand themselves, but they know they have maybe, we'll call them kinks. Maybe they have kinks or different things that they like, but they're afraid. They're either afraid to admit it, afraid to explore it, or afraid to bring it up to their partner. Um, like, what advice would you give to that or
Mhm.
suggestions?
Yeah. So here I recommend a sexual activity list. It's basically a list, I have a handout, there's also one online where it just lists like, 100, maybe not 100, 75 sexual activities from, making out to anal sex to sex in front of strangers
Hmm.
to, you name it, using a vibrator, that kind of thing. And first of all, I suggest that each partner fills that out completely separately. And this is a way then to talk about things without saying, this is what I want. And so you usually number it from, like 1 to 3. One is absolutely not, two is maybe, and three is yes, I want to try that. And there might be a bigger scale, it might be to 5. But and then you get together, you create again time to go over that, and then you see where you overlap. Sometimes you're going to overlap in a million places, sometimes you're not, but that facilitates the discussion. Oh, I didn't know you wanted to, try a
Right.
vibrator. Yes, I've been scared to bring it up, whatever it is. So I love doing things sort of outside, taking a third party, this, worksheet, and having that be the bridge. So you aren't actually saying, honey, I really want you to, I want to use nipple clamps. You don't have to
Right.
actually say that. It shows up on there, and you both say how you feel about it.
I think that's great. I mean, we do things like that for other objectives in our world, and I think having that so that you can just have a discussion. It's not a, it's not a definitive. It's something that you can talk about. Probably does break the ice, and you start finding other things out.
Oh, yeah, you
That's pretty
discover
cool.
a lot. That being said, you don't have to do that. Um, I often, kind of provide these sort of sentence stems for people. So if you wanted to approach your partner with a new idea, you might say, hey, I love our sexual relationship, um, but I had some ideas and I'm wondering if you want to hear them. Things like that. Or, asking your partner, obviously we've been together a long time and I realize, I don't know what you like to do best. Maybe you could tell me. And that then, so that you ask your partner if you're worried about bringing something up. And then obviously the hope is they ask you back, and
Right.
so that you can again share. But listen, talking about sex is hard. I mean, really hard
It
for
is.
people. They can talk about anything else sometimes but sex. And so that's why they come to me because they're often not able to talk about it, not able to, name it or say, I've gained weight, I'm not feeling as sexy. So, because, and then when people aren't having sex, there's so many assumptions that go back and forth. She doesn't find me attractive anymore, or, he's mad that I took a new job and so he's punishing me by not having sex. I mean, there are just so many different variations, but you have to figure out what's really going on. What is the why? What's happening? Often, it is truly, like you said, women are done taking care of people. But why does sex mean taking care of their partner? Why doesn't sex also mean I get to relax, I get to feel pleasure, I get to be a different part, use a different part of myself.
Yeah, I think that that is a very strong message that we should be paying attention to. It kind of goes along with where, um, especially women that are transitioning, perimenopause, menopause, they're empty nesters now. They're kind of coming into their own time and space before maybe grandkids come along. And it's like the perfect time. I don't think it's ever too late to start exploring and figuring yourself out. I think it's the perfect time to do that.
Oh yeah, it's the perfect time. And there are women, people in their 70s and 80s who maybe are, lost a spouse or something. And, they want to experience pleasure and,
Right.
that doesn't ever have to stop. Now, there are things that get in the way. There are medications that get in the way. There's low libido, there's erectile dysfunction. There's all these things, but we do have more, medical options also. And so, I work very closely with, urogynecologists, urologists, sexual medicine specialists, to try to help people also rule out medical things that are getting in the way. SSRIs, which many people are on, you can lose your orgasm, you can lose your libido on that. And so, also just giving some psychoeducation around that is really important.
So for the women, that are have not had an orgasm, because I've read that that's a pretty extensive number, or it can be. Um, how do you tell them to go back to themselves and take responsibility and feel it? And can a woman be satisfied? Can she, is there varying, where I'm trying to get, is there varying levels of what an orgasm means?
Yeah.
And can some of it just be mental? And do we all have to have that end all be all leg shaking orgasm? Because I know women tend to feel like, well, I'm not, mine don't feel like the way the book says. Am I broken? Kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Oh yeah, I get, am I broken a lot. And I want to say it's very sad, right? When you think there is something out there and you're the only person who can't do it, kind of thing. I mean, that's a
Right.
very lonely, sad place to be. So, first of all, I really do a lot of empathy and just normalizing. And then I think, when people hype up a movie and then you go see it, it may not, live up to the hype. And so I do think there is kind of this idea of not all orgasms are created equally and they don't have the same intensity. And so again, the first thing I try to do is take it off the table, work on masturbation techniques, mindfulness, relaxation. There's often trauma there, I'm not going to lie. And there's often, either kind of OCD or severe anxiety or feelings of loss of control that person just doesn't want to let go. Because the ultimate letting go is orgasm. Orgasm is extremely vulnerable. It
It's true.
requires a surrender. And there are people that psychologically really struggle to do that. Now, again, if someone has, anorgasmic, never having had an orgasm, we also want to send them and have their genitals looked at. Do they have, you know, is the can the hood of the clitoris go all the way back, or do they have a clitoral adhesion that gets in the way of pleasure? You have to rule these things out. And your regular OBGYN is not necessarily ever looking at your clitoris. So you need to see a sexual medicine specialist. And there are not that many of them. I mean, luckily, again, with all this conversation about menopause, there's a lot more attention coming. But you have to rule those things out. You have to rule out medication stuff. But I have successfully treated women who, a 32-year-old who had never orgasmed, and, through talk therapy and some sex therapy, she figured it out. So it's often a little bit technique, um, and a lot psychological. Are
Yeah.
you really willing to let go? And again, if I like this idea that you're talking about, which is, orgasms vary, right? And for people who do orgasm, they know that that was a really great one, that one was short, that one was the most pleasurable, that only felt like a blip, but I'm glad I had it.
Right.
So we also want to make space that, you it's not like, I do think that what is true is when you have one,
Hmm.
but I also think that if it's not that strong, you may kind of not feel like that is what other people experience.
Right.
And so I do try to just say, like, let's figure out what your orgasm and pleasure might feel like for you in your body.
Yeah, I
But
think
it
if
is
we
possible.
I just think if we got more comfortable with ourselves individually and just said, I am different than the next person and the next person, and I just need to know what's good for me, which can be so different and doesn't even need to make sense, in my opinion.
That's
Um,
totally right.
like just makes sense to us. And that goes back to you saying like exploring things, touch, sound, smells that excite us, turn us on, turn us off, and figure out, what is that little, I don't want to say magical formula, but what is it that arouses us, that works for us?
Yeah, I mean, I always say, there's something called, brakes and accelerators. So accelerators are things that make you horny, make you want to have sex. So it could be porn, it could be, cologne, it could be anything, right? And then brakes are the things that are turnoffs, right? Like, you ate onions and you have bad breath, or, I hate that shirt on you and now I'm not attracted to you, so there's no way I want to have sex with you. Or cologne, right? Cologne can be
Right.
an accelerator or a brake for someone.
Exactly.
But to identify what your accelerators are and then communicate that to your partner. Like, I really love when you wear that blue shirt. There is something about that blue shirt that just makes me,
Yeah.
really attracted to you. Share, right? You know, um, and it might be, you're right, it could be a smell, it could be a texture, it could be, when you're freshly shaven, it could, be all sorts of things. But
Right.
share those things. Share the accelerators first and then the brakes second, right? Because the brakes
Yeah.
are kind of hard to share. So you always want to start with the positive. Always. You always want to start with, that would be my number one piece of advice. If you don't know where to begin, other than masturbation, start with communicating to your partner about what you like. So in the moment, that feels good. Oh, I really like that. Stay there longer. Things like that. Because you want to encourage rather than discourage. So you
Right.
find the things that are working and try to amplify those first.
And I think going back to what you said, that we're responsible for our own orgasms, our own experiences. That taking that time, set the mood, which everybody's like, oh, that's ridiculous. I'm not doing. Put the candles on, get flowers in the bedroom, do whatever it is. But if we just take a little bit of initiative to set the stage, the whole experience could be drastically different. I believe.
Absolutely. And this is the kind of thing, I mean, I'll say to, there'll be, women will say to me like, "Ugh, I just don't care. I kind of want to watch a show and go to sleep." And I'm like, I understand. I get that. But if you value sex as part of your relationship, which you have to decide if you do, but hopefully you do value it, you think it's important, or you think that, well, once I get started, I'm okay. That's what I hear from women. Once I get started, it's fine. Well, hello, start yourself. Again, take your vibrator, into the bathroom for 5 minutes before your sex date.
There you
Turn,
go.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So that you have taken responsibility. This matters to me. And so now I'm ready, rather than like, ugh, this touch isn't doing it for me. Oh, I'm never going to be in the mood. You have to get yourself in the mood. And that means that you can have arousal before desire. The mistake people make is they want the desire to then start. But actually, if you physically arouse yourself So you start kissing, you start naked cuddling, you start eye gazing. That creates the desire. Don't wait for, lightning to
Right.
strike. Take responsibility, start the action. I'm not saying start intercourse, start touching, start kissing, start, again, eye gazing, which
Right.
people, whew, that's a hard one. Um,
Yeah,
you
I can
know,
imagine that's a really tough one.
yeah, that's sort of another couples therapy type sort of thing, but it also can help just look into each other's eyes and, connect, right? Most people love sex because it's pleasurable, but also because it's intimate and connecting. This,
I think that there's folks or there's women out there and men too that it's the physical part of the relationship, sex or otherwise, it is to them an expression of love versus an act of sex.
right. Yeah. And here's also where there can be a difference between partners, same-sex partners, different sex, doesn't matter. There's usually one person in the couple that needs sex to feel close. And
Hmm.
then the other person needs to feel close before they have sex. And that needs to get talked about. And that, frankly, just needs to get negotiated a little bit. Each person
Right.
needs to move a little bit toward the middle and be willing to do that, right? Either I'm going to have sex a little bit before I really want to. And again, I don't mean have sex when you do not want to. I want to be very
Right.
clear. I am never saying that you should have sex when you actually do not want to,
Right.
ever. The other thing, women, if you're faking it, stop. You don't need to tell your partner, I've been faking it for 35 years, but you can stop faking it and just start to actually explore what works. Because when you fake it, you reinforce that you will never have an actual orgasm. Why would your partner do anything different?
It's
They
true.
think you're coming. Why would they
It's
change
true.
up anything?
It's unfair. It's actually unfair
It is
because
unfair to your partner, but I don't recommend telling your partner you've been faking it
no,
every time.
no, I
I
wouldn't do
think it
that.
is, I think most women have faked it at some point, but stop. Stop.
I
That's
agree.
the first step toward your own pleasure is just to stop. But I do think there's needs to be a little bit of a willingness to try. So if you're not in the mood, but your partner is, you might say, I'm not sure I'm there, but maybe I'm willing to give it 5 minutes. And then often you do get in the mood after the arousal, the physical arousal.
Right. Like you said, laying, cuddling naked, just lightly touching each other. Um,
Yeah, I
it
mean the
just
9 second hug. The research shows that a 9 second, wait, is it a 9 second hug? No, it's a 20-second hug. I think it's a 9 second kiss. Releases oxytocin.
ooh,
So, um, hug for 9 seconds. It's 20 seconds.
20
Like,
seconds, yeah. Kiss
do
for
it.
9
That can change a relationship, by the way. That one small act can change a dynamic in the relationship
of a hug.
of a 20-second hug
Wow.
every day.
I love that.
Or a kiss that is not a peck, an
Right.
actual kiss that has like purpose and meaning. Try it. Next time you would go, give your partner like a peck, linger. It changes things.
I agree. I think we all, we always throw back to when we were, like you said, college teens, when making out was the thing. That was the thing that started everything, and it
Right.
felt good.
Oh, it felt great.
And we don't do that anymore. And we should, even just like you said, just a little bit more than a peck on a cheek or a
Yeah.
peck on the lips.
And I will tell you, most married couples don't kiss. They just don't kiss at all, like making out. They don't make out. And so, one of my homework assignments, usually for couples when they're struggling, is go make out and you can't do anything else. No, no breasts, no genitals, nothing. Just make out. Then what you're doing is actually you're putting in kind of a stop. And remember, when you weren't having sex, or you weren't giving
Right.
hand jobs or getting oral sex or giving oral sex, there really was just making out. Remember how fabulous that was?
It was.
So
And it,
if you put that barrier there, you actually create more excitement and it's more enticing to do it.
right. That's what that was just going through my head. Like then you really, really wanted to have this person. And then when you were younger, a lot of times you couldn't. So it just kept building and building every time you saw them or you made out with them.
Yeah.
That's good advice.
Yeah.
For women that haven't really jumped into the sex toy range for whatever reason,
Mhm.
do you have like a starter kit recommendation? Do you have like, here's a few things you need to just, whether it's sex toys or things that go along with that?
Uh-huh. Great question. First of all, lube. Okay, so as we age, especially perimenopausal, menopausal women, you're just going to need lubrication, right? Lubrication is a tool, and why is it not okay to have tools to help things along?
I
So
agree.
I look at sex toys the same way. It's just a tool. It's not a replacement for a penis. It's nothing. It's a tool, and it works often very well. So always have lube. Try different lubes. There's water-based, there's silicone, there's oil. They each have pluses and minuses. You can research that. And in terms of, I have a few favorites. So I love the Hitachi Magic Wand. That's a really great first vibrator. And a lot of women, again, only 13% of women can orgasm from vaginal penetration. So almost everyone is needing clitoral stimulation. So focus on the clitoral stimulation. If you like to put something inside of you, great. So I like that one. And I also like the suction technology. And so, my favorite right now is called the lemon. And it literally looks like a lemon. And I'm blanking on who does it now, who makes it now. I'm so sorry to that company. But that's a great one. It's got this suction air technology, so it doesn't actually vibrate as much as there's sort of a suction. And if you place that on the clitoris, it can be very pleasurable. It's also very small. The Hitachi Magic Wand or the other variations of that magic wand, they're always called magic wand, is usually a quite big. And so people go, how in the world am I ever going to introduce that into my sexual relationship? And so you may or may not, but you can certainly use it on your own. So those are sort of two that I really like. It's funny, I'm blanking a little bit, so give me a second because I have um, I can't find where I have all the lists, but I have it somewhere, but I'll get back to it. But I also want to do a plug for erotica and ethical pornography. You can look that up. So that ethical pornography is pornography that's usually catered toward women, and it's often real people who want to be doing this. So, and it looks usually more like real bodies and often includes LGBTQ and people of color. And that's a big thing right now for women. And that's really exciting. People often feel much better watching that kind of pornography. Um, and then there's all these apps now for erotica and things, again tailored toward women, so that everything is always about the male gaze. What turns on the male gaze, and excuse my language, fuck that shit.
Oh,
um,
yeah.
right, and
Hmm.
let's think about our own gaze on ourselves, right? Turning toward and loving ourselves and our sexual beings. And again, that comes from the inside out. If a song makes you feel sexy, turn it on. If a texture makes you feel sexy, touch it, wear it. Um, because I actually believe in some ways we turn ourselves on more than this other person. And so you've got to do things to make yourself feel sexy. And again, I want to really give a plug for that transition activity.
What do you say to the women that, because there's a percentage of women that are in this age group now that are quite the opposite, that are highly sexually charged, um, that have a ton of fantasies, that want to live it all out, but also are then ashamed that they are. So when all their friends and everyone else around them is telling them, yeah, I've lost my libido, it's so low, this, that, and other thing, and they're like, I, I want to
Yeah.
aggressively pursue sex.
Yeah, I think that's really important because, then you feel alone with that and what's wrong with me. Maybe I'm hypersexual, things like that. So I think fantasies are very important. And some people just have fantasies and never want to put it into action. And then other people want to put it into action. And so I think looking for support online, kink is now, I almost want to say, a bit mainstream.
Oh, exactly. I
Right.
agree.
Yeah. And so there's lots of sites for kink. Whatever kink you have, you can find it, if it's, or a fetish or whatever. And so I do think it's okay to pursue that. Um, Talking about it with your partner can be very scary, but
Yeah.
I would again set the stage for that. But this is very common. I have this kink. I want to do it. I'm terrified to bring it up. I think just leading with that. I
Right.
have something to share. It feels extremely hard. I'm so scared this is going to disgust you or repulse you or turn you off or whatever. So, usually, when you say that to your partner, they're not likely to lead with shame and disgust because you just told them how vulnerable you feel, how scared you feel. So, own it. Start with your vulnerability and your fear by communicating that. And then you follow with, I have a thought or I have a fantasy or I want to try or whatever the hard thing is. Again, unless your partner is a complete asshole, they're
Right.
probably going to either not react, even if they're having kind of negative feelings inside, or say, okay, thanks for telling me. Now, there often are mismatches. There's someone who wants kink and there's someone who's very vanilla. And that needs to get talked about, usually with a sex therapist, how you're going to do
Yeah.
that. How do you honor the person's kink? But again, there are all types of relationships now. There's open relationships, there's thruples, there's polyamory. So we also have a lot more space for that thing. There's swinging. So, I mean, those things can get talked about, and people do open up their marriages sometimes after 20 years, 30 years. But it has to be done from a place of love and connection,
Right.
not desperation.
Yeah, I could see that going horribly wrong if it's not, if it's not coming from a mutual, like this is something we want to do to enhance our relationship versus save our relationship.
Right.
Like,
Or maybe a man says, I have no interest in that, but I think I'm okay if you watch that pornography. I think I'm okay if you know, chat with someone online about it. And that needs to get negotiated. And that's tricky. I'm not gonna lie, that's
no,
tricky.
yeah, that's got to be real tricky. And we're going um, to someone like you, an expert in this or and trained to deal with this with couples and help them navigate it.
Yeah, and
Um,
mostly the most important role that I have as a sex therapist is to decrease shame.
I I can imagine that because I think
Mhm.
that's where it all starts to bottleneck. It all starts to go downhill. Is just that simple concept, that emotion of shame.
Yeah. Sex and shame go hand in hand, and it sucks.
It really does. It shouldn't be like that. It's
No, I
just so
know.
normal, and especially for women, we should really get out of our heads and just have fun with it.
Yeah.
Just enjoy what you're doing, whether it's vanilla, whether it's kinky,
Hmm.
just whether it's new. Just go and have fun with it. And
Yeah.
and if you're in a relationship, I would think that it's only going to make your partner happier for the most part.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's mostly going to go better than you think. I mean, like
Right.
everything, right? Our anticipatory anxiety is almost always worse than the actual experience itself. Not every time, but mostly.
Well, what's one thing as we kind of get to the end? I've sucked up a lot of your time today, but I was so appreciative of it. What's like one parting piece of advice, if you could give anything to women in general?
Discover pleasure inside yourself and outside yourself. Just start asking what feels pleasurable to me and keep cultivating that. And, don't be afraid of your vulva,
Yeah, exactly.
right?
Get the
Don't
bumper
get
sticker. I love my vulva.
awesome. That would be amazing. Yeah. And explore your clitoris. I mean, really explore it.
Right. Yeah. I think I would guess that there's still so many women, like you said, that don't even know their anatomy.
Right. Yeah.
Like if you said point to it, we'd go,
Yeah. Right.
where?
Go
Where?
Google, go Google, anatomy clitoris, vulva.
Right.
Do that.
Um, and definitely, I think the slogan for today is you are responsible for your own orgasm, or you are responsible for your own pleasure.
Absolutely.
Either way, I think that is a big takeaway message. Um, and you've given us so many avenues to do that, or at least you've opened our eyes to seek that out. So, speaking of that, do you counsel folks online or is it strictly in person?
Both. I do virtual. I'm licensed in DC, Maryland, and Virginia, and I work just outside DC in Maryland, and so I see folks either way. And some people really prefer in person, and then I do think some people like the virtual because it's a little bit less threatening,
Right.
and they get that a little bit of distance. But either way works.
Well, where can everyone find you? Whether it's your website and social media, because I know we are going to want to find you and listen to what you have to say.
Yeah, so you can go to my website, which is just simply brookebralove.com. And on Instagram and Facebook, it's at Brooke Bralove Psychotherapy.
Excellent. So I always ask every guest to give us a song for the Kellfire Show podcast playlist on Spotify. So what song would resonates the most with you with your journey? Whether it's your journey in all your 500,000 certifications or with sex or just your life in general.
So it used to be a Pink song, and now it's another Pink song. So it's
Okay.
changed. So it's Raise Your Glass by Pink.
Ooh, good one.
And it's just a hype song, I would say. So I actually usually listen to it before talks, before presentations. I didn't listen to it this morning, but I often will when I'm a little bit stressed or anxious. I just find it very powerful.
Oh, that's good. I was going to say she's coming out with Marvin Gaye sexual healing, but no, no, you
Oh,
surprised
well,
me.
I've got my playlist for, my R&B, 90s R&B kind of vibe.
Yeah, that like
You
get in
know,
the mood. But yes, I
yeah,
love
I've
it a
got
lot.
that too, but that's a little more, outside
Yeah.
of here.
Well, Brooke, thank you so much. I have a feeling everyone's going to say, please get her back on. We have questions, we have this and that. So I do encourage everyone to reach out to Brooke and find her on her website and her socials. But thank you so much. I could talk for hours with you. Honestly, I could keep going and going and going.
Yeah, it was
But
super fun. Thank you so much for having me.
yes, I will let you, though, get back to everyone that needs you because I'm sure you have a busy schedule today. But thank you so much, Brooke. And you can find us also on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon, Apple, all the places, and Instagram and Facebook. So thank you all for coming. And thank you, Brooke, again. And we will chat soon.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, I just wanted to tell you guys about our supplement line. If you haven't already heard, I put a lot of time and effort into sourcing out what I think are the most important things for women's health in this transition in our lives. And we have Dr. Kellfire's potions and elixirs. What we have first is a vegan vanilla protein powder. We also have, this is one of my favorites. It's prebiotic and probiotic. It's a greens powder. So you get your greens, you get your fruits, but you do really attack that gut health and balance that out. So I'm a big fan of Thrive. We also have apple cider gummies. If you've ever had apple cider vinegar, you know how harsh that is to take. So we have our gummies, and they are apple flavored, and they're really good. Supports metabolism. We have the lovely collagen and biotin combo in liquid, so it's awesome. You can put it in your drinks, you can put it in your teas, you can just shoot it in your mouth. I love tinctures, but collagen biotin for hair and nails, because that is extremely important at this time in our lives. 8-in-1 mushrooms, illumination. Love this product. It's 8 different nootropic mushrooms that supports immunity, anxiety, mental state, awareness, focus. This is my favorite, baby. And then I probably shouldn't have said that, because this one is my favorite, baby. This one is bovine glandular. So this is derived from bovine uterus. This is for hormone balance and libido support. This is a staple, and I think it should be a staple in every woman's wellness kit. All of our supplements you can get on mytempesta.com. Just hit the shop link and everything there. You can get it one time. You could sign up for a subscription with discounts, and they'll just come to your door. It will spark your wellness journey and ignite your fire.